Hey, U.S. history. Most of you have already seen me this morning on the economics video because that class came first. But I want to go ahead and do a very quick summary / introduction for the end of last unit and going into what we're about to start. So we finished at school up through the Civil War, and then kind of moved on through the presidents at the end of the 19th century, and then all of you should have by now finished and turned in, which you have not, I only got one, your political violence essays. Why did 3 of the 4 presidential assassinations occur within 30 years of each other, 35 years of each other, at the end of the 19th century? And if you look back in Slack, I'm having a hard time with words today. I had given you guys the information involving different kinds of inventions and political issues and Reconstruction and amnesty and all that stuff that was going on shortly after the Civil War that may have led to some unrest and contributed to the political violence we saw with the assassinations of Lincoln and Garfield and McKinley. So what I want to do now is kind of bring that together and bring that forward into our introduction to the 20th century. So we're moving from the Civil War, we're going to do a little bit real quick today, and we're going to spend the rest of this week and the first couple days of next week going over thematically different things that are happening between the end of the Civil War and the beginning, really the end of World War I, although we will spend some specific time on World War I next week. So first thing we're going to talk about is the change in social justice. So 1865, we have the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, but it's the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment outlawing slavery completely. So suddenly we have an entire new setting for why people are all the same. So I only have a couple of minutes for each thing. This is just an introduction. We'll go back and talk about each thing individually later. But that was 1865. We scooch forward. We have the fight for women's rights. We have the establishment of unions and labor rights and workers' rights. The Boy Scouts get founded in 1910, and women finally get the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment. So that's sort of a social justice thing, and we will talk about that. It'll get its own video, its own lesson later this week. Another lesson that we've got will have to do with the huge advancements we made in transportation. So part of that deals with the expansion of the country. We start adding more states, the country gets bigger, we buy Alaska in 1867. We complete the first transcontinental railroad, that's coast to coast, in 1869. And then the really big one that can never be overlooked, one of the most important inventions of the 20th century, happens in 1903 when the Wright brothers fly the first airplane in North Carolina. So that's our transportation arc. Our next arc is health. We start looking at health and wellness and fitness in a different way. And that starts with the invention of football, which I'm sure some of you have seen before. In 1869, the founding of the Red Cross and a change in nursing and the way we care for people medically in 1881, and the founding of basketball in 1891. And as we move forward, we start learning better things about safety gear. Baseball helmets get invented quickly, things like that. People start caring more about their bodies and the health of their neighbors than they have in the past. Okay, so that's 3. Social justice, transportation, and health. Our 4th arc, the next thing we're going to focus on, is the development of technology. And that involves just invention after invention after invention. We have this huge explosion of knowledge in the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century. So we have the invention of the electric light bulb, we have the invention of the telephone, we have the invention of the repeating rifle, that's a gun that can be fired just by pulling a trigger without having to be reloaded. We have the invention of the smoke detector, we have the invention of the zipper. We have all these things that are making life faster and easier and more mobile, easier to get from one place to another, easier to maintain contact with people. It's just easier to do things, and it's making the world a little bit more global. And then our 5th arc, the 5th set of lessons we're going to do, are going to involve the establishment of the United States as the world's greatest superpower. And I don't say that as like a patriotism thing, it's just a fact. The United States, beginning around the Civil War and progressing through the world wars and into modern times, is the biggest military and financial power that the world has ever seen. And so that also starts with an expansion of the country, including the purchase of Alaska and some of the other states that are developed out west. And we move through 1898 and the Spanish-American War, and the Treaty of Paris, after the United States wins that, suddenly gives the United States colonial status with powers that extend overseas throughout the Pacific and the Caribbean. Then we also have in the 1890s the annexation of Hawaii, which gives us a solid Pacific base, which makes it easier to reach out to China and Japan and some of the other powers across the Pacific. And then, of course, we have the participation in World War I's victory. The United States didn't join World War I until near the end of the war, but they helped to really turn the tide and earn a victory without experiencing a lot of the devastation that happened in Europe from the actual battles themselves. So the United States certainly lost a lot of people. There were a lot of men killed in the war, but we didn't experience a lot of deprivation or a lot of damage to the actual country. And so we got to reap a lot more benefits from the victory without having to do as much of the cleanup as a lot of the European powers that used to be kind of major superpowers. So Great Britain and France and some of those places were huge superpowers through the colonial period, but by the time we get to the world wars, they get so damaged that they can't keep up reconstructing things and moving forward, while the United States only has to move forward. And so those are our 5 focuses for the time period that we're going to move forward through. So that was social justice, transportation, health, technology, and the establishment of the U.S. as a superpower. And those 5 fingers will bring us through really the rest of the year, because you guys are going to start a project that's going to involve focusing on any one of those 5, up to you. I'm not making limits, you can choose whichever one you want. And we're going to start with the end of the Civil War, and we're going to bring it all the way to modern times. So everything we do for the rest of the class is going to focus into these 5 sections. And you guys are going to create either PowerPoints or video lessons or board games, anything a little bit outside the box to kind of track the progress of things from, the invention of football up through the invention of different types of football protective gear, into the NFL, and into more recent things about how we deal with concussions maybe, and different things like that. And that just would be one branch of it, because health involves a lot more than just sport. We could talk about nursing with Claire Barton and the founding of the Red Cross, and moving through Florence Nightingale in Crimea, and forward through the non-combatants that worked as medicine because they were pacifists in the sense that they didn't want to fight, but they wanted to participate in helping people during the wars. So there's a lot of options, and we'll get way more into that in the future. I just want to give you guys a heads up so you can start thinking about which of these 5 fingers might be the most interesting for you. I think that's all I've got for you today. I just wanted to have a short video, make sure it works, make sure everybody can access it, and I look forward to seeing you guys. Hopefully we'll get some interconnection going on. Please make sure you're getting your work turned in. This class has not been great about that. I have not gotten assignments from many of you. So get on that, get your stuff turned in, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.